question is, do Scottish people fear immigrants taking jobs and using state-run services or bringing foreign cultures and customs?
I think what they're worried about is not so much that, because usually immigrants who come to a country work quite hard. I mean, this has always been the case. But I think the problem is there are too many people coming. The open-door European immigration policy means that any number of people can come to the country, which means we cannot plan for pensions, we cannot plan for jobs, we cannot plan for anything at all, housing, anything like that. And this causing wage compression. Already working men and women find that their wages are being compressed. They're having to compete too much for rental of property, which is very high, it's going higher, and also it puts pressure on people wanting to buy houses. This is a major problem that affects ordinary working people in Scotland, as we can see from the figures, that people in Scotland are just as worried about it as people in England, slightly less, because you know the south coast of England and the east coast of England are the front line. They are getting the brunt of this. I don't think people dislike immigrants. I think we're a very welcoming people, and that's not just the Scots. I think that all of Britain, we're a pretty welcoming bunch of people. I don't think anybody has had such a peaceful absorption of such a large number of people. But I think that it is a problem and it has to be stopped. And the only way to do that, I'm afraid, harping away, is getting out of the European Union, because if we don't do that, we simply cannot stop a large number of people coming to the country. I think we need to employ the people we have who are unemployed in Scotland, and we need to employ them first. And the reason they are not being employed is they are not being trained. And I think the problem is training. And that's a problem of various governments, Scottish Nationalist, Labour, Conservative. The problem is that, you know, for example, the health service. We used to be a country that used to export doctors and nurses around the world. We still do. Now, hang on, now we import them. And we import them from third world countries, often who have trained them at great expense to themselves and don't have the money to do it.
So you do or do not think the economy needs more immigrants?
I think we need to have a moratorium on non-skilled immigrants, and we need to take technical immigrants where we absolutely need them. But we used to have a points-based system like Australia, which I do believe the Scottish
the systems we can get to in a moment. We just want to know about the numbers at the moment.
Evening. What do the panelists make of the concept of a multiracial society united by one culture rather than separated into their segregated communities?
David Coburn, let me ask you that first.
I think that's a very good question, and I think it's a very important question. The problem we've had in the moment, we've had the biggest amount of immigration in our history. It's a massive amount of immigration, and it's caused enormous social cohesion problems, not so much in Scotland, but it certainly has down south in England. And quite frankly, this is going to be an increased problem. We must integrate our society. We must have time to integrate immigrants into our society. We do not want ghettoisation, which I'm afraid the Labour Party have encouraged for many years, and the Liberal Democrats.
Well, let's put that to Anne McKechnie. Do you think there's a problem? You brought up the Labour Party. Let's put it.
Basically, that they couldn't draw on it for 5 years, and that when they're working here, they should have private health care for at least 5 years. But the most important thing, and all these people seem to not get this, all the other parties just simply don't get it. As long as we're members of the European Union, we cannot stop people coming in, and we must allow them to draw the same benefits as UK citizens. That is non-negotiable. That is the rule of the European Union, and unless every state agrees to change that, which they never will, that's not going to happen. So the only option is for us to leave the European Union before the health service goes bust.
Somewhere else.
The problem obviously lies in Europe, and he knows fine well it does. That, for example, people coming from poor economies who have just joined the European Union in Eastern Europe or indeed in the Balkans, they come here. If I were them, I'd be coming over here. But there are not a lot of British people going to work over there, and they would not get the same treatment. And you know fine well that the system in France, you cannot get money out if you don't pay money in. There's a different system. So therefore, anybody who comes to the UK can take money out, whereas if I go to France, I can't. And you know that that is disproportionate, and that means that our economy is just simply going to go bust. We will not have a health service, and the only way we can deal with this matter is for us to leave the European Union. There is no possibility of changing it. The Conservatives talk a lot of nonsense about renegotiating.
We understand your position on the European Union. Let's take a couple of quick contributions from the... And we've got another question in the second row, the gentleman in the pale shirt.
Sorry, can I just ask, is there anyone in the panel who might happen to be a plumber, joiner, painter, decorator? These are the people who are actually affected by the issues that we're talking about tonight, and you know, this panel is largely composed by the chattering classes, people who aren't at the front line of how immigration affects people, and I think the BBC would do well to have a debate which actually involved people like that.
Well, yes, I mean, we've seen it recently. I mean, it's as obvious as nose on your face. Everybody knows that this is a problem. The security
what have we
services,
seen recently?
well, we've seen this problem with the jihadis going off to Syria. This is a problem. We've got to have social cohesion in this country and make sure people live together.
But the girls who went to Syria were girls who had been brought up.
I'm talking about, yes, of course, but that we have got to persuade people to social cohesion in this country. We can't live in ghettos. The Labour Party for years and years and years separated and segregated everyone. Of course
Absolutely
it did.
not.
And they
Absolutely
wanted to rub everybody's noses in diversity and all this sort of nonsense. And the problem we've got now, we have not integrated people properly. People should have been integrated properly. It's not happened. We must do that. And if we have just even more immigration without doing that, we cannot absorb huge numbers of people with different cultures, different religious views, and expect the country to be a happy environment. We need to absorb people.
Well, we have four parties who I'm sure agree with that. David Coburn, do UKIP think that if an international student has paid to study in Scottish University for 4 or 5 years, they should be allowed to work here?
This should be done on a pan-British basis, because once they're in Scotland, there's free movement to England or Ireland or Wales, so therefore this is a pan-British thing that should be decided at Westminster. I don't think this is something that should be decided alone in Scotland, because
would it not be possible to create a work visa that said that you could work in Scotland?
But how can you stop them moving to England? I mean, it just wouldn't work, and everybody knows fine well it wouldn't work. And quite frankly,
you are happy to see a situation where people come, learn valuable skills in Scottish institutions, and then are denied the opportunity to work here?
Absolutely
put those skills to
not.
work.
I think they should have. UKIP are in favour of a similar system to the Australian system, that people are needed in the economy. They will be invited to come to the economy. That's fine, but they must pass that test, and that should be a pan-British test. It shouldn't. You can't have Wales suddenly deciding, oh, we're going to have people, but they can go to England or they can go to Ireland.
All right, well, let's put it to the audience.
I think this is a pan-British thing.
Let's put